Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. As the case may be for you, welcome to this webinar by Fintelekt and Asian Bankers Association, the first one for 2024. And in keeping that is the first one for 2024, we thought we'd talk about the AML compliance priorities for the year to come. So as we all know, in AML CFT, the regulatory landscape continues to evolve, and staying ahead of emerging trends and challenges is absolutely crucial for reporting entities that are committed to maintaining the highest standards of AML compliance. So, in today's webinar, we have four AML CFT experts from across Australia, Cambodia, and Singapore who will discuss challenges as well as the top few priority areas for the year to come. But before we begin, let me thank the Asian Bankers Association for being long-standing partners with Fintelekt for these webinars, as well as our other workshops. We are truly grateful to them for their support. In today's webinar, we've got more than 1,000 people registered with over 500 live and also some now being redirected to YouTube. Let me quickly introduce our panelists for the webinar today. The first one is Naren Kork, who is Head of Compliance and Certified Compliance Officer at SBI LYR Bank from Cambodia. Naren has more than 15 years of experience in compliance and AML and CFT in both local as well as regional banks, and she has passed many professional AML CFT courses. Welcome, Naren, to the webinar. Our second panelist is Chanvoleak Shiv, who is the Head of Compliance at Woori Bank, Cambodia. She has a wealth of experience working in the AML CFT field for a number of years in commercial banks and has grown through the ranks from an officer level to her current role. Her priority at the bank has been to implement all the control measures for identification, assessment, and mitigation of AML CFT risk and forming the compliance culture within the bank. So welcome, Chanvoleak. Our third panelist for today is Roopa Sushil, based in Singapore. She is the compliance lead and MLRO at Anchorage Digital. Roopa has over 17 years of experience working for highly regulated entities such as financial as well as non-banking financial institutions across the Asia-Pacific region. Her areas of expertise include compliance advisory, strategy development, BSA, AML, sanctions, anti-bribery, corruption, as well as fraud risk management. Welcome, Roopa, to this webinar today.
Thank you for having me, Shirish.
Our fourth and final panelist is Luke Raven, Senior Partner Financial Crime Compliance at Bank of Queensland in Australia and based in Melbourne. Luke, as many of you know, is a top voice in AML on LinkedIn with more than 15 years of experience in financial crime, including fraud, sanctions, and AML at many of Australia's leading banks and global fintech companies. So, Luke, welcome to this webinar. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Fantastic. All right. So, as always, audience, post your questions to panelists in the Q&A section. There's a button at the bottom of the screen, and we will take them up towards the end of the webinar. Today's discussion will not have any PowerPoint presentations. It's going to be completely interactive. It's going to be a conversation. All of you who attend the complete webinar will receive a certificate of participation as always. If you don't, attend most of it, you will not get the certificate, and the system will let us know who's attended everything, right? So again, welcome to all the panelists, and let me start with the first round of questions. And Luke, I think you're going to be the last in the line because we're going to do ladies first, and three of them are ladies, so you're going to be fourth in line at least for the first round.
Chivalry's not dead. I'm more than fine with this order.
Right. So let me start with Roopa. So Roopa, 2023 last year has been an interesting year, for virtual assets with large enforcement actions across the world, right? Singapore has been at the forefront of regulatory change and is also signaling to the crypto world and to everyone really that crypto is here to stay but with some disclaimers maybe. So, how has the evolving crypto industry actually reacted so far to these regulatory changes that happened in the last year? And what is your outlook for 2024? If you can, speak a bit about that, over to you.
Thank you, Shirish. Let me go back in terms, from talking from 2023 and then moving forward, what do we see from an outlook standpoint, right? So there have been many challenges over the past 12 months, but I think we all are very excited within crypto industry to see the renewed focus on crypto regulations and serious policy making discussions around crypto market structure across different geographies. We at Anchorage are very closely analyzing all these regulatory developments, and here is our short analysis. From country perspective, we see that countries can be grouped into three different buckets, right? So the first category of countries are those that have adopted licensing, registration rules, and strict KYC requirements for consumers and institutions using a tech-neutral approach. So what does that tech-neutral approach mean? Is regulators using existing laws applicable for TradeFi to be applied from crypto company standpoint, irrespective of the fact that crypto, which is an underlying technology, is relatively new and different from TradeFi industry standpoint. Regulators are of the view here that existing laws are broad enough to cover the crypto industry, and there is no an underlying assessment taken into account from the new technology standpoint. And the common notion, I think, here generally, which the regulators use, is same activity, same risk, such same regulations. So now moving on to the second bucket of countries are those which have come up with creating comprehensive and facilitating legal frameworks. Multiple countries are in this process of developing clear, comprehensive regulations from crypto industry standpoint. To name a few, Thailand, Hong Kong, Japan, Singapore, South Korea, Switzerland, UAE, and UK. These are like some of the names which I can recall. And this is a significant win for crypto industry that has faced many instances of hostility and threats of ban over the years. At the same time, we see the regulators are picking up, they are identifying the crypto risks, but we also see strict regulations being imposed, strict licensing requirements, KYC rules, which hurts the industry sentiments of operating in a complete autonomous and decentralized manner. So now moving on to the third set of countries, right? So these are the countries which have decided to not acknowledge cryptocurrencies as a legal tender and crypto operating companies as regulated institutions. So there are no regulatory agencies appointed, no regulations or policies being designed, and there's no guidelines from the regulator standpoint. Some of these countries that I can identify are India and Nigeria. China continues to take its stand on outright banning cryptocurrency transactions in the country. So, amongst all, within Asia Pacific, we see that Singapore and Hong Kong seem to lead the regulatory landscape in Asia, with many crypto firms expanding their businesses in these jurisdictions. While Hong Kong and Singapore have emerged as a high profile crypto hubs, we also see other countries such as Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan have also formulated relevant regulations and guidelines for this industry. So, to complete my thoughts and to answer your question, Shirish, as you heard, there are many countries within Asia and outside that have taken steps to move ahead and be deliberate and thoughtful about the infrastructure, risk management, and compliance requirements necessary to rebuild trust and to open access to institutional and retail investors. In 2024, we expect more regulatory oversight, and with more regulatory oversight comes BSA AML costs and expenses, consumer protection measures, which are very critical in terms of rebuilding trust and stability for the crypto industry.
Right. Thanks, Roopa, for that very crisp and clear outline and analysis. Let me now move on to our two panelists from Cambodia, Naren and Chanvoleak. Naren first, maybe, so considering that Cambodia was, taken off the grey list last year, the FATF grey list, what do you think the banking and finance industry should prioritize in this year to ensure that the FATF standards continue to be adhered to in Cambodia? So maybe Naren, if you can respond to that first from a Cambodia point of view, and then after that, I will request Chanvoleak to respond as well.
Yeah, thank you, Shirish, for the question. In 2023, it was a great achievement for Cambodia, especially to the regulator effort to move Cambodia from the grey list. So we may have a different expectation based on the position we stand for. Like the regulator, they may have a point of view of priority, and the banking sector, they have a different point of view. So for me, as the banking sector, I have priority for the AML CFT in 2024, focusing on the collaboration, engagement, and update. So the collaboration meaning we have to collaborate with the regulator for any request of the document, for any request of information, and make sure that all the information we provide to the regulator can help the regulator in the area of the assessment. So also the engagement, so far we have a great engagement in the committee. We have engaged all compliance and also engagement with the regulator. So we have to make sure that we can practice and implement of the AML and CFT follow the applicable law and regulation. And the other one I said it is on the update. So we have to be ready for the update of the technology, the new trend of the AML and CFT. So we may be mature for the AML and CFT, and also we have to be mature and work the same as the criminal or terrorists, because they may also stay updated than us as well. And the other priority that we can have to maintain the FATF recommendation compliance from the banking sector, we may focus on the proliferation financing. Even it is similar like the AML CFT, but it may have a different in nature. So we have to make sure that the reassessment, the customer due diligence, or the risk from the PF may include in our CDD or KYC practice. And the other one, maybe we focus on the UBO information. Actually, the so far have many challenges because we cannot have the public source to search on the beneficial owner, and may have a different challenge from different bank and different standard as well. So we can see the great journey of the US, the FinCEN, that just start to reporting on the UBO of the corporate company. So we wish we can have this journey start in Cambodia soon. So at our banking sector, this is the requirement from the AML CFT. So we need to, based on the effort, try to identify who is the beneficial owner of the bank. UBO information is one of the recommendations that still remain PC for Cambodia. So as the banking sector, we need to conduct a proper and robust due diligence to identify who is the beneficial owner of the corporate. And I think the other one priority is on the anti-bribery and corruption, and also the tax evasion as well, because it may contribute to the risk of money laundering as well. So this is the point of view from banking sector that we can prioritize in order to make sure Cambodia still remain compliant to the FATF recommendation.
Thanks, Naren, for that opening. Chanvoleak, can we hear from you?
Yeah, so regarding to the Cambodia have listed in the grey list in 2019, of course it was under the subject of increased monitoring, and with that, Cambodia have established its strategy to improve and it measure for the anti-money laundering and combating financing of terrorist regime. and enhance effectiveness control to meet the commitment action plan. So in the significant progress and of the improvement, currently Cambodia have been delisted from the grey list. So to that, as a bank, we have robustly implemented the control to ensure the effectiveness measure, including the implementation enhancements of the AML system, such as screenings, such as transaction monitoring, and the identification of the customer risk rating for counter the relationship with the customer. So set out the mitigation measure for MLCFT programs and ongoing improvements, such as update from time to time of the parameter of the transaction monitoring to follow the trends of the ML and FT risk. And as well to reflect the ML and FT risk toward the business behavior as well, such as the new product and service that the bank have employed, and especially the digitalizations that we involve with the payment system as well. And enforcing and control to each type of the customer that we have been established the relationship, like earlier Naren have mentioned about the UBO identification, customer diligence, and this is the most importantly that including the reporting that we as identify the suspicious transaction, the suspicious behavior of the customer to be reported to our regulator, and to protect the bank from the victim of the ML and FT scheme. And regarding to that, I mean like in terms of commercial bank in Cambodia, we mostly have received the on-site visiting from our regulators, so that they are highlighted on the PF law regarding to the UBO identification, regarding to the customer risk rating of political exposed persons, such as foreign political exposed persons, and how to document and identify them before we onboarding them, and how proper documentations of screening to ensure that we are fully complies to the regulatory requirement. So I think that regarding to this as well, is the compliance and responsibility is to provide the understanding to all the staff, the management, the to whomever have to be implemented the account opening and in terms of operating a business. So they need to understand the idea of why we require to implement the AML program.
Right. Thanks, Chanvoleak, for your comments. Let me now, move to Luke finally. So, Luke, being based in Australia, what would you say is the general outlook for AML CFT in Australia, especially since the country has embarked on many reforms to its AML CFT regime. Can you take us through some of these changes or proposed changes? And what would you say will be the likely impact of these proposed changes on banks and FIs in the year to come?
Yeah, absolutely. So generally, I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I think the outlook is pretty good, all things considered, in Australia. Just for context for your attendees, the AML regime in its current form came into Australia in 2006 and 2007 with two different acts of parliament. They've been revised over 100 times since then with minor revisions, but there's never been sort of a structural revamping of the whole thing. And unfortunately, it hasn't aged well. It's not aging beautifully like I am. It very much looks like a product of its time. So with that in mind, FATF came and had a mutual evaluation of us last time in 2015. They had a whole suite of recommendations that we really need to get going on. And our Australian Attorney General's Office has now embarked on a consultation process with industry, but it's already a couple months behind. We're going to be reviewed again by FATF in 2026 by the most likely estimate. Before then, we've got a lot of work to do. But yeah, generally we're optimistic. So the reform package is going to have a huge impact, and it's going to be really positive. A lot of us are hoping for the existing reporting entities. So we really want sensible reforms that make checking the box, that we all hate that phrase, don't we? But checking the box on compliance easier. Because once you've done that, that's when we can actually focus on the real meat on the bone and go for actual outcomes and effectiveness, the stuff that gets us out of bed. So an example that we're all, waiting with bated breath to see if we get is the adoption of a UK style tipping off provision as opposed to what we have in Australia. So in the UK, it focuses very much more on actual harm that you should not allow to happen. So don't prejudice a law enforcement investigation, makes sense. In Australia, it's much more rigid and it's just an absolute fact. You cannot allow anybody to infer even that an SMR, which is our version of a SAR, has been filed. So little quality of life, things like that. Also, we have a really sort of strict regime that requires an AML program in two specific parts, Part A and Part B. Part B is where you put your KYC. Part A is everywhere else. It's kind of rigid and unnecessarily formulaic. So a little bit of renovation work would be in order. But the biggest change, so those are all the things for banks and financial institutions that are already regulated. But the biggest change that could come through, and we're all thinking it will, is actually regulation of our gatekeeper professions. So the DNFPBs is the way that FATF calls them, the non-financial professional businesses, lawyers, accountants, real estate industry players, for the first time. So illicit actors, if you look at any of the big busts in Australia, or even in Singapore, they're using these sectors. And Australia is one of the last FATF countries to delay bringing them into the AML fold. If that happens, and it probably will, then it'll mean adding over 100,000 newly regulated entities for the very first time to the regime in Australia. So it's a big opportunity. It's going to be a big challenge as well. But generally, the outlook is really positive.
Fantastic. Thanks, Lou, for that. Okay, after we've done with this first round of questions, let's quickly run a poll for the audience to see what they're thinking. Can we have the poll up, please? So what do you think will be the biggest challenge for your AML team in 2024? Will it be recruiting and retaining skilled resources? Is it getting new budgets, new technology, managing regulatory expectations, or keeping pace with evolving risks? So let's give the audience for 30 seconds to respond to it. And then it would be great if some of the panelists could comment on some of the answers that are coming in. Well, luckily, nobody is saying other, so. Okay, maybe give it a few seconds more. Okay, that's it. Panelists, can you see the poll results on your screens? Any comments? So we've got about 19% of the audience which has said that skilled resources is a challenge. 19% has said technology budgets are a challenge. 18% have said that regulatory expectations are a challenge, and 44% have said that keeping pace with MLTF risks is a challenge. Any of the panelists would like to comment on this?
Yeah, if I may, I agree with 44% of you, and I'd like to point out that the rest of you are sort of saying internal problems or regulators or customers or stakeholders are a problem. I like the last one because we're here to fight bad guys, and that's one of the biggest challenges that we have. They're changing at a crazy rate, and all of the other stuff is important too, but it's to allow us to do that last thing. That's my answer anyway.
I agree with Luke here. So keeping pace with evolving money laundering, terrorist financing risk is very critical because we have seen from the past that all these money launderers or sanctions evaders, they are all ahead of the regulations and the regulators, and they think much more faster, and they have even more greater technology, or they understand the underlying technology so well that they're able to come up with solutions, right, in terms of evading. We recently saw in Singapore where Singapore regulators have identified money laundering case worth of 3 billion right? So this is all a joint effort between banks, regulated entities, crypto exchanges, so on and so forth, to identify all these individuals involved in it.
And I would like to say as well that regarding to the criminal, they always run ahead of us. I mean, like, okay, when one is caught up them, then they will find a way to find another path to do another scheme. So of course, technology is improving so as them as well. They are always on the top of the technologies, and they are always on the top of the to find a way how to committing those crimes and to fraud, to creating the schemes, and how to build a story for that the victim can fall into their scheme. So this is a very challenging that not only we are establish the control, but we also have to understand that how we can to ensure that we are on the same path and following to the trends of the AML CFT topologies and the cash that they are involved. Yeah.
Thanks, Chanvoleak.
Yes, I also agree on the 44, as I mentioned, because the criminal may be more expert and professional in money laundering. So we, as the banker or the other sector, have to cannot walk behind them, but we have to walk far from them.
Right. Thanks, Naren. All right. Let me stop the whole sharing. Look, coming back to you, there have been reports of rising involvement of organized crime groups, right, in financial crime in Australia. What would you say are some of the money laundering risks and typologies, that financial institutions and banks should prioritize in terms of monitoring and controls for this particular risk?
Yeah, look, it's pretty interesting. Recent times, organized crime is a business, and in my view, they've pivoted, especially due to the influence of COVID, the emergence of AI, and other great technologies for committing foul deeds. So I think fraud is front and center. I honestly do. I think it's becoming syndicated. We know that pig butchering is a global issue. And it's fueled by human trafficking and scams and all of this sort of stuff. So it's awful, right? And the antidote is not AI. It's not some crazy new way of thinking. Fraud's the name of the game, and KYC is the solution. It should be top of mind for everyone in 2024. It's a little bit of an indictment of where we are as an industry, that I don't think a lot of people are doing it correctly still. It goes beyond just knowing who your customer says they are, and it should also match with what they're doing. So as financial challenges mount, fraud is more appealing, becoming a money mule is more appealing. It's not enough to know anymore that account belongs to Luke Raven. We also need to understand why he's doing what he's doing, and whether those funds that he's receiving are legitimate or illicit in origin. So this KYT as part of KYC and understanding the customer's profile, I think that this is absolutely paramount. And I think this is fairly international, but I certainly come from an Australian perspective. So if any of the other panelists want to correct me, please feel free.
Sure. Thanks, Luke. Panelists, would any of you like to weigh in on that particular point?
I'd like to share a little bit that how we are planning to do and how we wanted to implement into the banks to set this control. I mean, like, they always have a new trends of the AML and CFT scheme. So from time to time, we are mainly focused to also update our transaction monitoring parameter. We're setting the rule, we're setting the statistic to see and to give us the guidance that, okay, what we can see, what are the transactions are really increased, what kind of the product are really in the very popular product that they are used by the customer. So we are keep the precautions that, okay, if in terms of that statistic and in terms of that trends, then what we can be putting as a control to set a limit, a threshold, a parameter to set that, okay, we need to review those kind of transaction, we need to monitoring those trend of flow or the trend of the usage of the product and the service within the bank. So that this is the one point that we can add as our control to really be I mean, like we try to catch them. Of course, we cannot be so far behind them. So at least we are closing to them that, okay, there is a trend, there is a new way of doing things, and then we need to find a way whether this is which genius list or is somehow involved in the scam, or there are new schemes topology, you know. So yeah, so this is I can share on.
Right. Thanks, Chanvoleak. Roopa, moving over to you, what is your opinion on, how can crypto players, especially companies like yours, which deal with institutional players, how can they continue to build trust amongst investors?
Interesting topic. So 2023, again, I'm just going back 2023 and then going to talk about what has happened and then going forward, how we continue to build trust amongst investors, right? So 2023 was an interesting year for the digital asset industry as a whole, with numerous headlines, TV talk shows, podcasts devoted on the developments in the industry. On one hand, the industry witnessed it came up from recovering from the huge collapse of most well-known crypto exchanges and players, as well as the value of most prominent cryptocurrencies improving over the years of historical erosion in value. So we also noted increased enforcement action on crypto players from regulators all across the world. Shirish, as you pointed out at the beginning, right? So US has proven to be one of the most active enforcers of penalties and legal action against crypto companies in 2023. SEC in the US has brought cases against 5 crypto exchanges in 2023, including the big names Coinbase, Binance, Kraken, alleging that they sold unregistered securities via the platforms. Well, Binance was ordered to pay more than $4 billion to US authorities as penalty, including its former CEO pleading guilty for violating US AML and sanctions requirements. Right. So, on one hand, we saw that US taking the lead on enforcement. Singapore was not far behind too. We noted Singapore's Commercial Affairs Department launching an investigation on regulated crypto firm, Hodlnot, and its directors for possible criminal law violations. MAS also reprimanded Three Arrow Capital for providing false information to MAS and exceeding assets under management threshold allowed for a registered fund management company. So, on the other side of the spectrum, after many years of hostility and ban on the cryptocurrency market, I think the regulators and TradeFi institutions have now realized that crypto is here to stay a long time. This, together with the fact that regulators in various jurisdictions are coming up with regulatory framework, clear policy guidelines for crypto players, has resulted in increased investor confidence, particularly institutional investors. So we saw many institutional investors have either entered or plan to enter the cryptocurrency market, either via ETFs or directly trading cryptocurrencies. This has resulted in increased demand for regulated and safe digital asset custodians. So there was a study, I'm just going to refer back, which was conducted by EY in late 2023, that shows that institutions are moving forward with their plans to invest optimistically but cautiously, with majority of them currently taking invested or staying invested between 1 to 5% of their portfolios into digital assets or related products. So in choosing custodians for digital assets, I think institutional investors are more worried and concerned about security, regulatory compliance, commingling of assets, bankruptcy remoteness, etc., which seems to be a natural tendency for any institutional investors, right? Because they always feel comfortable with regulated institutions for these reasons. So at Anchorage Digital, we have long believed more crypto institutions need to come under the umbrella of regulatory supervision. That's why we pursued a federal banking charter for our affiliate Anchorage Digital Bank and ultimately became one and only federally chartered bank in the US.
Right. Thanks, Roopa. Okay, let's move again to our panelists in Cambodia. And, we spoke a bit about the FATF grey listing, and, now that the country is out of that, I think governance is going to be paramount. So let's talk a bit about, on the, AML compliance culture. So, Naren and Chanvoleak, how do you think banks and FIs can actually foster a culture of AML compliance and accountability, right, through the organization? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you. So for awareness on the compliance, we have many approach, and everybody may familiar with the word tone at the top, and actually it is from the audit firm, but I think it's still the valid and applicable to apply in the situation. So tone at the top is the commitment from the board, from the senior management, and from everyone in the company. So we can see many behavior and decision that reflect the tone at the top of the board and the senior management, like the budget approval on the compliance cost, like the incorporate of the compliance culture in the governance, and the other thing that have the clear vision of the tone at the top, and normally all the staff will follow and understand this. Another thing to improve the compliance awareness to the company or to the bank, to make sure that compliance is not comply only in paper, but in the spirit. Apply the compliance scorecard and KPI setting for the involving staff. So this one may be painful, but it is a good approach. Without the enforcement, then they will not do and follow. So I think it is the best approach. Then they can understand, and also they can do what the law requires. The other thing, I think it is on the reinforcement, on the training. I think that sometimes the training from compliance and MLS is so boring. So I think we can simplify and then make it short, but try to provide them the concept and mindset, because everyone will understand and believe and will do what they believe. So that is why we have to embed this in their mindset. And the other thing, the other solution, I think it is on the mindset that try to change their concept that compliance just only the pointer. So we may be their partner to provide them the understanding about the risk. So they will be aware that the compliance is not only compliant to the regulation, but it may go beyond the regulation, because sometimes it shapes their behavior and also their characteristic as well. So every time we provide them the finding, we also need to explain them what they need to do and what they need to know the risk as well.
Thanks, Naren.
Thank you.
Can we have your
Yes. So setting the ground to the compliant culture is very challenging. But instead of sharing the awareness, to my experience, to foster the culture is not telling what to do, but to address the question how to protect them from being the victim of the ML and FT activity, and the reason why we need to fight the ML and FT. So it is not to be compliant with the regulations, but it is to have the nation from the insecurity, to prevent the criminal activity, to stop the predicate offense that led to the violations and the security disruptions. To do that, we conducting the training from time to time to enforce on the understanding of the importance of the combating ML and FT activity, and to that as well, we are ensuring that training the understanding are delivered effectively. To my experience, I develop on the awareness programs where every month we send out the case study, definitions, process, news, and any regulation update to all the level of staff, including the from the implementer to the board level, so that this is as the reminder and the awareness to keep them interesting into the importance of the ML and CFT. And by setting the ground to the culture here, it's not only for the stakeholder that the compliance handling with, but also internally our compliance team as well, to ensure that they have the skill, they have the correct understanding, and they have their professions to convince and to interpret these conversations to all the stakeholders that this is a really important. So we need to be internally consistent to each other as well, that this is a very ground step for us.
Thanks, Malik. Okay, one final question for all of you before we move to audience questions. Really the outcome of this webinar today. The top 5 priorities for AML compliance in your organization for this year. So, may I request each of you to sort of list out what are the top 5 priorities that you would have for this year? So, maybe starting with Luke.
Sure. I should mention I'm speaking for myself. I don't speak for any organization. But as a professional in this space, I do have 5. I've got KYC. First and foremost, I'm nothing if not a broken record. It is of paramount importance. If you get KYC wrong, you get everything else wrong. And not every entity has got all of their KYC correct. Secondly is effectiveness. People will stand up on a soapbox and tell you that box checking is terrible, rah, rah, rah. You have to check the boxes. That's regulation and compliance with regulation. It's in the name. But it doesn't have to be all we do. So effectiveness as a focus is going beyond just checking those boxes. Okay. Cooperation. There's no combating all of this without effective cooperation. We're talking public-private partnerships. We're talking private-private partnerships. A lot of the time, the public sector cannot keep up with the resourcing and sophistication, essentially, of the private sector. So private-to-private partnerships. In Australia, we've got some of these. In Singapore, they're doing some very interesting stuff. I think that this is going to continue and has to be continued. It's necessary for us to have a real impact. Fourth, I haven't lost count. Fourth, a holistic approach. So fraud begets money laundering. You can't really do money laundering without committing fraud. And nation states are involved and rogue actors, and sanctions become enlivened as well. We're going to find, countries placing pressure on one another to say, hey, there's a lot of financial flows going there that are basically ripping off our citizens. Can you stop that? Otherwise, we may have to consider a sanctions package. Just this week, Australia has done something relatively unprecedented. We've sanctioned a cyber attacker from last year from Russia, who's potentially a member of a state-backed organization there. And that was followed on then from the UK and the OFAC. So I think that this holistic approach is going to continue. And then the last thing, I'm not sure if everyone can see, I had some tech difficulties. I had a better camera, but it's not working. But I'm not sure if you can see my shirt here.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, it says follow the money. It's not super relevant except for the fact that I'm very, very passionate about what we do. And I think that, was it Naren said around the perception that we're boring? We all need to be super passionate about our jobs. That passion is infectious. It'll get people that historically have been on the fence on side. And what we do, when we do it well, saves lives. So that's absolutely important for all of us to take away from this. Now I'll shush and hand to someone else.
Well said, Luke. Roopa, over to you. Your top 5 compliance priorities for this year.
Yeah, sure. So as briefed earlier, 2023, we saw increased regulatory scrutiny, increased enforcement actions on crypto industry, right? So it is quite clear that regulatory bodies are growing their understanding of crypto landscape and are working closely with crypto players and public-private partnership in building up and shaping regulations for crypto players. Singapore and Hong Kong regulators are very engaged at the industry level. They do seek feedback from the industry players, blockchain associations and committees to bring the crypto players and have closed door meetings on take feedback and provide the regulations draft. So Anchorage is part of some of these blockchain associations and then closed door meetings. So we continue to work closely on these institutions and building regulations. So that will be our priority also, to work closely with public-private partnerships and regulators in 2024 to provide feedback on proposed regulatory changes that impacts crypto industry. The second would be, we also noted significant leap forward in travel rule adoption for crypto industry. So 2023, we saw some of these jurisdictions amending and revising travel rule framework with increased scrutiny on unhosted wallet transfers, reduced travel rule requirement thresholds for transactions, etc. So at Anchorage, we adopt a scalable travel rule solution that can be easily adopted across all regulated entities. So 2024, the plan is to further streamline our internal control framework, policies, procedures by working closely with our group compliance and product team in managing AML and sanctions risk. In response, so we saw that there was a lot of negative press and feedback, right? Late 2022, early 2023, when fund mismanagements of incidents from large crypto exchanges and firms. So regulators worldwide have moved towards more stricter rules on custody of customer funds, segregation of roles and responsibilities between different teams operating within the company, especially where there are conflicts such as trading teams and custody teams, etc. Segregation of company assets from client assets, market manipulation framework to identify insider trading activities, so on and so forth. So this exponential shift in the regulatory landscape increases the workload on compliance professionals and legal teams across crypto industry. So in 2023, we saw MAS, the regulators in Singapore, came up with various consultation papers on proposed regulatory measures on TPT services, where MAS introduced business conduct measures, consumer access measures, technology and cybersecurity requirements, and market integrity requirements, which are applicable going forward to crypto players, which will be licensed in Singapore. So these regulations are still in draft mode, and MAS has not issued a specific timeline for the implementation. So our goal here is to more identify and perform gap analysis, come up with proposed material gaps, and try to meet these requirements before MAS goes live with these regulations. So these, I know, top three maybe, but yeah, these are like the critical ones I can say, Shirish.
All right. Thanks, Roopa. Okay, Naren, your turn. Top five priorities.
Yes, thank you again. So I think compliance also have a objective to see the business applicable law and regulation. So the top priority for the bank to ensure the objective are that I have to focus on the compliance effectiveness implemented by the first line of the fund. So we have established in 2023 a lot of control and document and also process. So this year I will prioritize on the effectiveness and implementation of uh, of those actions to ensure that the front line they can understand, they can implement those effectively. The second priority is the engagement. I think engagement with the business to ensure that every business decision they will understand about the risk and also they understand about the requirement of the law and regulation as well. So I will pay more time to engage with the business side to understand also about their challenge and also provide them the resolution as well. The other priority is on the technology and the system. So this time I will reactivate some of the system to provide automation rather than the manual because the manual may give us more painful. So we will focus on more on the technology and digitalization that can help us to detect and effectively provide an escalate report to the regulator. And the other thing that I prioritize also the anti-bribery corruption and also some red flags. So I will reactivate the transaction rule and some of the parameters so that we can effectively capture the suspicious transaction from any product that offer to the customer. The last one, I think it is on the data governance and accuracy of the report. So actually, we have to do the assessment on the money laundering for the bank wide. So we need to focus on the data, make it consistently, and also the accuracy of the report. So in overall, the priority are on the people, are on the process, and are on the system to make sure that we will go forward to our objective that the business grow also. There is no non-compliant issue in the bank.
Thanks, Naren. All right, Chanvoleak, your priorities. I know it's a bit challenging because to be the last speaker when everybody else has listed their priorities. But over to you.
So for me, I think that the main point first is to setting or update our policy guidelines process to ensuring the standardized and the consistency practice, including the documentation, filing, recording, so that we can go into the next priority that we setting the report base. So it can give us an overall view of the ML and FT risk. So once they have all the information recorded, and then we can capture as the report base, then we can have then overview. And the next step is to have that overview risk to be identified where we need to put or enforce the control within, so that we can be fulfill the loophole or the gap in that control to be implemented. And for the fourth one is that when we are all in the control and set to what we are need, we are need to conduct the testing and monitoring to ensure that the control is efficiency and effectiveness implemented or conducted up to the up to date, and also reflecting to the actual risk and meeting the bank aspects and the business growth as well. So for the fifth ones, of course, we cannot forget about the continue develop our own understanding, compliant cultures, and share our vision with the stakeholders such as business lines, management, and board members, because otherwise we cannot accomplish all of this without their engagement. So the engagement from them is very important as well, to set the ground, to set the boat float in the correct directions. Yeah.
Thanks, Chanvoleak, for that. Thanks to all the panelists for their 5 priorities or number of priorities. Now, before we move on to the Q&A, we've got sort of about 7 or 8 minutes left for Q&A. Let me make a few quick announcements about our upcoming sessions in the next 2 months, so that those of you listening in today can register for it. So we have 3 workshops coming up. In fact, 4. I think there is one missing here. So we have one in Manila next week. That's on risk-based customer due diligence. We have one on the same topic in Cambodia on the 19th of March. So Naren and Chanvoleak, I hope to meet you when I come to Cambodia for that. Obviously, when I'm in Manila next week, I hope to see many of our friends in Manila. And then we have our FCAP certification program, which will take place in Thailand and Bangkok on the 20th and 21st of March. And between all of this, on the 8th of Feb, we also have a workshop coming up in Nepal, which will be taken by our faculty, Juliet Chin. And then we have a few virtual workshops coming up in the next month. So one is on red flags and anti-money laundering. That's on the 2nd of Feb. We have one on February 20th, specifically for the Philippines casinos and online gaming companies on AML's CDF best practices. And another one again, specifically for the Philippines on the 22nd of February on anti-bribery and corruption. So these are some of the upcoming workshops that we have, both virtual and in person. So all those of you from those respective countries may want to take a look at our workshop page on our website and see if you'd like to register and meet all of us over there. Okay, we have a few questions coming in. There was one from Boren Kork. Boren, good to see you on the webinar. So, what are the priorities for your own personal development as a person responsible for compliance of an organization? If each of you can maybe very quickly answer that one.
I started drafting it, but then it went midway. There were a few questions coming by, right? So, personally, I think staying updated in terms of new AML technology skills is one of the key priority for me. Plus, understanding any new trainings. Yeah, we also as a head of compliance or MLROs, we also need to do several trainings. So we also intend to do some of the trainings to understand what are the upcoming trends and the risk identified in the jurisdiction. And yes, definitely on the new regulatory front, keeping ourselves abreast is also quite important from a professional development standpoint, right? So these are like ongoing things that I do. Shirish.
Thanks. Anyone else would like to comment on this?
Yeah, as compliance professionals, when we're looking at customers, the most important thing we can do is ask why. And when we're talking to internal stakeholders, the most important message we can get across is so what. So every one of us should always be constantly honing our communication skills. Of course, I said when I'm trying to talk about good communication skills, but we should be trying to do that so that we can build impetus and get senior managers and directors and CEOs, etc., all on board with this journey, because no one starts a bank or a fintech to catch bad guys. If that's your passion, typically you've gone into law enforcement or something else, but we have a vital part to play, and everyone can always sharpen up their communication skills and get across that message of so what, why are we doing this, and so what.
Right. Naren and Chanvoleak, would either of you also like to comment on that question? What should you do for your personal development in the compliance profession?
I think that our knowledge is not limited. So there is a lot of results coming from all the webinar workshops and free webinar and some certification from all around the world with the certified and also justify that it was very useful. And I've been attending a lot of those webinars as well, that we can also understanding each and other regulation behaviors and cultural of the compliance and all of that. So maybe we can starting from that as well to like such as this webinar to have the understanding.
Right.
Yes, I think keep learning and to develop our professional skill is a very good approach. And also we also can keep learning from the other and from the mistake as well. So maybe we keep ourselves qualified and open for any study about the other bank control, and also keep engagement with the other compliance officers so that we can learn from each other.
Right, thanks. Okay, let's take one more question before we end the webinar. I mean, we have many more questions, but I don't think we'll have time for all of them. So there's one which says that with several conflicts and wars going on around the globe, how can financial institutions prevent funding directly or indirectly to organizations or states that are fueling such conflicts? Is there any FATF advisory or guidance on this? And there was one more, which maybe from Roopa's point of view might also be worth answering. Cryptocurrency is well known by its nature of digital currency trading activities. Such activities would involve the money laundering schemes, while in some countries are yet having the specific regulation to onboard customers. What you mentioned, that those three buckets that you mentioned. So what is your advice for the banks to go beyond local regulations? So we know that during strife, a lot of the funding also happens through maybe crypto. So if you can take the question in part A and part B, that would be great. So who would like to go first? I mean, Roopa, Luke, would either of you like to answer either of these questions?
Yeah, I'm okay to take the cryptocurrency part. So if I may repeat the question, Shirish, so it is,
Yes.
so they are saying the cryptocurrency landscape is well known for, the underlying technology, right? And then the activities may involve money laundering. Yes, of course, it was, right? While in some countries they are yet to regulate. So that's why there is a sunrise issue from regulatory standpoint. So there are jurisdictions which have regulated, while there are jurisdictions which are still on the verge of regulating. So while from a retail standpoint, or when you are identifying, let's say you want to invest as a retail investor, maybe you see all this hedging and all this, the price is going up, right? So definitely we are inclined to see whether I want to make some profit out of it. So you tend to look for crypto players in the industry to open account. So from the consumer standpoint, what I can say is look out for jurisdictions which regulate and the players which are regulated. So at least you see that there are some strict licensing requirements, onboarding requirements, source of income, source of funding requirements which have been put in place, right? So that's why you feel that. And the important part is your fund safe? Is the company commingling your assets with the company assets, right? Are they holding your funds in a segregated account, in a trust account? So these are the common things or common steps that you should be looking out for when opening a normal crypto account. And then feeling or identifying, okay, there's some jurisdictions have not opened this or not have come up with the regulations. So should I be opening an account with an entity which is incorporated in a jurisdiction which doesn't even have any regulations? So that's a risk element, right? So you're playing with your money. So play wisely. So find out which country has more stringent requirements and where this is regulated, and try to take a risk-based approach.
Thanks, Roopa. Luke, would you like to comment on the first question about the conflicts and wars and
Would.
funding?
Look, I think FATF has a place and would probably admit themselves that they're the furthest thing from that they may be political, but they're not really into nation level conflict management. So I was just checking, but you may have seen me flitting around, my eyes looking back and forth. I was just checking that the actions that FATF have taken against Russia, for instance, are illustrative here. They have suspended them as a member. That's fine. They have not placed them on the black or grey list. Okay, so FATF is not your sanctions go-to. I think that they wouldn't necessarily disagree with me. Your local regulator and the big ones, so UK, OFAC, like I know these sanctions better than Australian sanctions because these are the big players. Those are the ones you want to know. IMF, that they have more sort of sanctions stuff than FATF, I think. And then in terms of what you can do, KYC, I'm not sure if I've mentioned it enough. KYC is very, very important for sanctions. But more than that, there's a really interesting component of this question I could rant about for a long time, which is about the indirect funding and indirect circumvention of sanctions. You need to have policies and procedures in place for things like dual use goods and all of that sort of stuff, and understand what breaks line of sight. So all of these come into a good sanctions risk assessment, and I think that sits separately to AML alongside, but not part of it. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Great, thanks, Luke. All right, I think we are sort of over time now, 5 minutes over time. So let's close the webinar. Thank you, Naren. Thank you, Roopa. Thank you, Chanvoleak, and thank you, Luke, for joining us at this webinar and sharing your time and thoughts with the audience. We will try and send you some of the other questions which have come in, and if you do have time, respond to them offline, and we will try and get those answers back to the people who asked the question. Thanks a lot again to the Asian Bankers Association for supporting this webinar and for being a partner with Fintelekt. With that, we close this webinar. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Bye.
Thank you.